It's true, my favorite deck of recent memory is a Bracket 1, and has never won a single game that it's played, but for some reason that doesn't take any of the enjoyment out of it. In fact, it almost in a sense amplifies it. And the weird thing is, I've always been told before brewing this deck that decks have to be powerful to be fun, as a majority of people don't even consider Bracket 1 as a fun option of brewing decks. And to me this is funny because how many times have you heard or even said yourself that you just want a deck that you can turn your brain off at the end of the night? Well, your optimized Bracket 3 deck is not going to do that, it almost never does. But why is there this disgust towards Bracket 1 whenever Bracket 1s fit that purpose so well for what that person's looking for? But before we go over the bigger issue of why Bracket 1s are so hated, let me go over my favorite deck that I have currently brewed. For a short background, I am an art student in college, which of course means not only am I broke, but I have a fascination with art and storytelling. A few months into my Magic journey, I found a manga that actually uses Magic the Gathering as a story element. In Destroy All Humans, they can't be regenerated. And for the people who haven't read or even heard of it, it's more than anything a story of two high schoolers forming a bond and friendship using Magic the Gathering as an outlet to do so, more than it is a story fully focused on Magic itself. I myself, like I'm sure all of you, have made countless close friends and have had great interactions with people just because of this silly card game, which I really found a real connection to. This manga means something to me emotionally because to me it is a representation of what I love most about Magic, how it brings people together. And so, of course, I wanted to make a deck about this series that was focused on Magic the Gathering. The story starts with the main characters of Sawatari and Kano dueling it out to see who is better, and I wanted to make a deck using only cards played in the series from these two decks. Kano playing a mono black deck and Sawatari running a mono white list, I settled on Selena Dark Angel as the commander since it is one of the few Orzhov legends featured in the manga. And while I do get some decent cards to run, the deck actually locks itself out of games more than anything else. Dread of Night and Light of Day, two cards that are heavily played in the manga that I would just have to have in this deck, are going to lock out half of the creatures that I play with. But to me there's kind of a beauty to that, and with Bracket 1s in general. In a sense, while my deck is locking itself out, I'm sort of recreating the first match that Kano and Sawatari had in Volume 1, and as I added more cards I go into more moments from the story that I love. Since I am a broke college student, I will have to save up, but one day I could run cards like Hatred and City of Traitors, showing off the moment that Sawatari and Kano traded for the cards that they pulled, since the other person pulled the card that the other one wanted. Which, side note, can we go over how much Sawatari got fleeced here? Not only are we trading away Hatred for Cataclysm, bad deal, but we are throwing in City of Traitors like it's nothing. This is the modern day equivalent of, hey man, I'll trade you my playmat for your basic planes and throw in my PS5 for good measure. Like, I get you're trying to impress your man here, but let's maybe make better decisions with our trades here. How could you not predict that in about 20 years this card would be over $300? Come on now. But seriously, putting in these janky cards that don't synergize and in a way having a one-on-one game with my own deck, sort of playing as these two characters is something I find value in having in my collection, and I'm not scared of it being jank or being perceived as not powerful. I get to show off my love for the game, and also a story that was created because of it without the need to hyper-optimize it or have it stomp wins over people. This beats out my optimized Cloud deck, beats out my budget Tifa deck. This deck that fights with itself is my favorite thing to play with currently. And I think that that's what really opened up my eyes to something bigger. While playing this deck that can barely function, I realized how much joy there is to just letting go of the idea that a deck has to be powerful to be fun. I started to notice how many people around me just refuse to give themselves that same freedom, and how afraid we can be to admit that we built something weak, even when it's something that is just there to make us smile. So let's break it down. Why are Bracket 1 decks treated like a joke when they might actually be the most honest kind of deck you can build? The biggest reason that I can think of for someone not wanting to build Bracket 1 is, like I stated before, people don't like outright saying that they built a weak deck. Even if you built a deck around all cards that just have mohawks or something crazy like that that doesn't care about winning, most people still have that slight subconscious thing of not wanting people to know that their deck is just not powerful. But let's knock that opinion right out of people's minds, because not only is it wrong most of the time, but the times that it isn't wrong is what you're actually trying to do anyway. Let's say that hypothetically we're pulling deep from our Bracket 1 bag and building a deck all around goats. Notably, there's only 16 goat cards in Magic the Gathering history, but this deck could still be theoretically powerful. Older goats are going to have Mountain Walk, making them unable to be blocked if the defending player controls a mountain, and then the newer goats are going to dive into some +1/+1 synergies, and you can find a Naya commander that fits that strategy, like let's say Miles Morales for instance, since
Where's the goat? The goat!
And again, this deck isn't bad currently, but it's not turboing out wins, still falling under the guidelines of shooting for a game to last around 9 turns. And this deck is for sure still janky. We of course aren't running any spiders and only have one legendary goat that we can run in our deck, but we still get the fun of saying that Miles is in the command zone because he's the goat. We are sacrificing deck synergy for a funny joke, but that's what Bracket 1's all about, and it doesn't inherently mean that our deck is not going to function at all. And you can take this deck in so many different ways whenever you're at low power. Throw in some niche and underplayed +1/+1 counter cards, and some kindred cards that will let you pump up your goats. These aren't going to make the game end faster, but buff up your board and make your goats a little beefier. Maybe you can go the complete other route and start to make a farm animal deck, throwing in other farm animals, having your deck serve as more of a barn than a deck. And that's the fun that you can have with Bracket 1 decks, not only with yourself, but with other people. Whenever you're asking for deck help with your Bracket 3 and up decks, it can sometimes kind of feel like the person giving you advice is trying to seem like they're smarter than you. But whenever people are giving you cards for Bracket 1 decks, it's all about the fun of having more enjoyment for your theme most of the time. In my channel Discord, we've been talking a lot about Regos, the awesome lobster chef from Edge of Eternities, and how we're all building it. A lot of the members I have are building it Bracket 3, and that's awesome, but the fun was whenever we look at these fun cards, like Food Fight. As not only was it a super fun option for our Bracket 1 people building Regos, but it's just a good card in a Regos deck, period. And no, I'm not saying that every time you build a Bracket 1 deck, you're going to find this awesome card that can go into your Bracket 3 or 4, but I am saying that opening up your mind to different ways of building decks besides just synergy can really open up different cards you would have never thought about. And I'm sure that some of you are out there rolling your eyes, thinking that this is boring, or since it's not powerful, you don't want to do it. And for my first point, it's completely fair if you think that this specific example is boring. Not everyone is going to get a laugh off of me making a goat deck, and I'm not saying that you should force yourself to think so. But is there really not a single thing in the game of Magic you want to experiment with or build a Bracket 1 around? There's a real sense of beauty that comes to making a Bracket 1 deck, of just sitting down and making a deck that you are certain is not going to win most games, and still doing it anyway. One of my personal theories as to why people hate Bracket 1s is that they grow too attached to winning and hate the thought of losing while showing off something that's more personal to them. A Bracket 3 and up deck is going to sacrifice your own personal flavor for synergy pieces for the sole purpose of winning. So whenever that deck does not win, in a sense you failed as a deck builder, but this is the complete opposite of Bracket 1 decks. My deck about destroy all humans that can't be regenerated is not going to win a single game in its lifetime, and in fact it's actually going to piss off other players with how many stacks pieces it has for specific colors. But once again, my goal is never to win, it is just to show off the manga that I really grew attached to whenever I got into Magic the Gathering. I can explain story elements that made me laugh, like the whole City of Traitors bit, and it's a whole table experience. While not all players are going to love the story like I do, it's something other than winning that can bring people together. Building a Bracket 1 deck should not be a shame ritual where you feel bad for building it suboptimally. It should be an expression of yourself, where the pressure comes off and you can just build a deck with cards that you like, more than cards that are just synergy pieces. I mean, how many times have you really liked a card, wanted to put it into your Bracket 3 deck, but when it's time to cut cards, it's one of the cards you just have to cut for a more functional piece since you're trying to win? In my mind, not only is this just watering down what your decks can be, but it's making it less you. To pull a metaphor really far out of my ass, back in my Minecraft days, the worlds that I just said F it, let's ball, and built stuff from my own mind, and didn't follow any tutorials gave me a lot of value. I still watched tutorials on how to build certain stuff, but I felt a sense of pride even if knowing that it looked shitty, I made that, and I think that it transitions perfectly whenever it comes to deck building. Are you someone who only prioritizes and has fun by winning, needing to build powerful decks to have fun with Magic the Gathering? If so, this is perfectly fine. I have a friend who can't build under Bracket 3 because to him, going through the dirtling that he would call it in Brackets 1 and 2 just isn't something he has fun doing. And I'm in no way saying that he is wrong for thinking this way or think that building Bracket 1s would be fun to him right now. But if you're watching this video this far in, I'm sure that there's a random card out there that you thought was funny, but thought this is not powerful enough to go into one of my decks. I have a friend in college who really wanted to make a Looney Tunes deck due to the reference to the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote from Thunder Junction, just because he is an animation student like me, and he wanted to show off his inspiration for why he wanted to do this with his life. but their own thoughts of it not being powerful enough to be played stop them from actually completing it, and that really hurts to see that the power meta of brackets 3 to 5 is pushing players away from these lower brackets of enjoyment. There is nothing wrong with building a deck that durdles or doesn't fully synergize. Sometimes in my case, those are the decks that mean the most to you because they are a real projection of who you are and the things you care about. But I have seen this narrative since brackets were first made, that bracket 1 is just for people who can't build decks, and that if you want to build a bracket 1, you're just wasting your time. But I want you, if you're still here watching this, to have a real thought and consideration of why you love Magic the Gathering. Maybe it is just to play these powerful cards, maybe it's getting to have a deck with your favorite animal as the theme, maybe it's just having an excuse to find time to get together with friends. I would argue that almost all of the reasons you can think of for why you love Magic the Gathering can be turned into a reason to build a deck where you can truly turn your brain off with a bracket 1 and just show off who you are as a person through the game that you love, and not just make a generic list of cards that you were told are synergistic.